White and the Seven Dwarfs, we talked about it a little bit the other day, but there's such funny commentary around it. And I wanted to show you guys this Piers Morgan video, where he had someone who was a dwarf arguing with someone who's a woke activist who was applauding Disney for their change. Now, if you haven't seen, um, the, now this photo that's circulating, I don't think that's actually that's not actually the actors as a stand-in, but this is a real picture. Now, Disney actually tried to say that this wasn't real, and or at least the Daily Beast reported that, I think, and then they had to come back and they're like, this obviously looks fake, and it is fake, and then they had to actually like go back on that article because it was actually true and real. So people have noted, now people have been talking for a minute because they casted a woman who is not white as Snow White, and her skin's supposed to be white as snow, so that doesn't make a lot of sense there, is what it is. Maybe they'll have some kind of different reasoning, or whatever, for the name and whatnot. But the dwarves are what's really tripping me up, man. I'm not totally surprised that they went this route, because I don't know how many people remember this, but last year, Peter Dinklage, who was the star of Game of Thrones, who was an elf, was really upset because he heard they were doing Snow White and Seven Dwarves, and he liked the fact that Snow White wouldn't be white. He's like, how can they be so progressive here, but they want to do this backwoods story about, these dwarves living together in the woods, and he just had a really strange take about it. And I do have a video up about this again, like we reported about this about a year ago, which I thought Peter Dinklage's commentary was very strange, because a lot of people got associated with him because of Game of Thrones. That's not the first thing I saw him in. Maybe Elf wasn't the first thing that I saw him in, but the first thing I remember him from is definitely Elf. And if you're not aware of the movie Elf, it's a really big Christmas movie, so I'd be a little surprised if you weren't aware of Elf. But Will Ferrell plays an elf, but he's not really an elf. But he was raised in the North Pole or whatever, and so he goes home to find his dad and his family. And his dad works at a corporation that has children, that makes children books or whatever. They couldn't come up with a good idea or something, so they hired in this specialist who writes children's stories, and the writer was Peter Dinklage. And so when Buddy sees Peter Dinklage, he doesn't understand that there are people in this world who are just short. And he thinks that he's an actual elf who's been misplaced. So he's saying all these things that are offensive to the author, to the point where the author just starts beating the crap out of Buddy. And he's just like, oh, you're really angry elf. And so I don't understand why it's okay for him to take a job like that, but it's bad for people to take jobs as dwarves in being dwarves in Snow White. And so I mentioned this at the time when I did the video and talking about Peter Dinklage. I'm like, Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, the dwarves are the heroes of the story. And people are like, oh, the original story. I'm not talking about the original story. I'm talking about Disney doing adaptations of their content. And I understand that they change things. I'm not like, I just think of the live actions as mostly something, different or whatever. We can complain, and a lot of choices I just don't understand as far as what they're doing with their brand and other stuff. I just don't get them a lot. I think it's interesting to commentate about this stuff. It doesn't mean that I'm crying in my pillow at night because Snow White is not white and Ariel is black. It's not like something that's breaking my heart. I did find a lot of people's commentary about A Little Mermaid annoying, because I'm like, you guys are being really dishonest. But that's for another day. Don't want to get too off track with that. But the Snow White thing, I don't understand, because the dwarves are the heroes of the film. They are the ones who take in Snow White into their home. Yes, she does clean and keep it, tidy and other stuff like that. But they take her in, and then when the witch comes, the evil queen poisons her. They're ready to go to war. They pick up pickaxes because they mine diamonds. And they all chase her. These 7 men go on the hunt, and they end up going up this mountain, and she ends up like falling to her doom, to her death. So they're the heroes of the story. Like, she liked the prince. The prince got all the glory because he kissed her and woke her up from her slumber or whatever. But they were the heroes of the tale. So they're very famous roles. When I was a child, I had like a Snow White doll, and I had all 7 dwarves and stuff. There was one that was like they like did different things. Like they would change, like Sleepy's eyes would open or whatever if you like had touched it with water, like Dopey. I don't remember what Dopey did. Like I think Grumpy's nose would Sneezy's nose would get red. I don't remember what Grumpy did. Dopey, I think he had kisses that would appear on his cheeks because I think she kissed him. And Bashful would turn red. So I had I had memorabilia when I was a kid of Snow White and stuff, and I had a pillowcase and stuff. I like the film. Snow White was something that Disney really, really loved, was always trying to recapture that magic of Snow White. And so for Disney to listen, I assume, I don't know how much them listening to Peter Dinklage talk about that stuff made them decide to alter their characters. So now they only have 1 dwarf, and everyone else is like short looking kind of guys. One looks kind of taller, but he might just be tall relative to everybody else. And one's a woman. So they made this massive change. So if they did that because of like noise from Peter Dinklage, and they're like, oh, maybe he's right, and this is insensitive for some reason, and like, we got to change things up, diversify it, and we can only have 1 dwarf. Just because someone is in a particular group or class or whatever doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean they're right. There was a video I saw today, and someone was selling hair bonnets, and people were I guess white people would ask her all the time, like, is it okay to wear these bonnets? Is it okay to wear these bonnets? I don't want to be culturally insensitive. And they probably feel that way because there are a lot of videos of people complaining about white people with braids and other stuff like that. Or there was a video I replied to about people being mad about white women buying particular hair oil or something like that. And I'm like, it's sad that it's a bonnet. It's a silk bonnet for your hair when you sleep. And so thankfully this person who was making these products and was like, it's for everyone. Bonnets are for everyone. You can buy a bonnet if you're a white person. But there would be some people out there probably like, nah, that's a black people thing, and you're like cultural appropriate. They, crazy stuff like that. So just because someone is a particular race or gender or whatever, it doesn't mean that they're right about a situation that they are the end all be all. So just because Peter Dinklage said that particular thing shouldn't have made Disney feel like, oh, they had to change it. And I'm not saying that was like the determining factor of why they decided to alter course and change stuff. I don't know if they decided that before or if they decided it after, but I think it is suspicious. And if I had to wager, I would think that probably was playing into their minds as if they were starting to put this movie together. I would think, because he's a pretty big actor, and it was trending a lot. People were talking about it as he called them out. But I do want to show you guys this video of Piers Morgan having this debate about Snow White on his program, because this was just like peak perfection to me.
But you, James, so you want to stop Dylan getting a role in a Hollywood film?
I am not going to get into an attack on a dwarf.
You don't want a dwarf actor to land the role playing a dwarf part.
Listen, a dwarf can play a dwarf part, but I think it's important to change narratives that don't fit in today's society. And really,
which is that narrative?
It might be better if dwarves just exist in normal roles everywhere, because they do exist.
What was so bad about the way dwarves were depicted in Snow White? Have I missed something?
Well, listen, I'm not here to talk about...
That's what I'm kind of wondering as well.
I don't represent Disney, but I'm just saying I think I see their point of view.
What's their point of view? What was so bad about the depiction of the dwarves?
Why are you so upset about a movie changing with the times and moving forward.
Because I think that, honestly, with great respect...
there is real news we could be discussing.
No, but this is real news if you're a dwarf actor who are now out of work because of virtue signaling idiots.
But you're just
who
using
think that everything has to be rewritten
you are just
to be inclusive,
as a cheap
when in
shot.
fact it's not inclusive at all.
No, you're using Dylan as a cheap shot to attack a wokie.
I don't think Dylan feels I'm using him as a cheap shot. And what I would say about the wokie thing is this. I have spent the last year listening to people tell me only gay actors should play gay parts. Only Welsh actors, so Michael Sheen, should play Welsh characters, and so on and so on and so on. But the moment we have dwarf roles, which are the most famous dwarf roles in Hollywood history, then the only people apparently who can't play them are dwarf actors.
Dwarf
and
roles.
I see there
it's a cartoon
stinking
here.
woke hypocrisy.
So, just peak perfection, peak culture right there. And a lot of people will, like, there are other things we could talk about. Yeah, sure. But this is like a symptom of society, kind of where we're at and where we're going. So these films and stuff is kind of like a weather vane for the culture. When I talked about the Peter Dinklage situation a year ago, because I listened to my commentary about it this morning, to just kind of refresh, it was I mentioned how Disney, because I do think that they ended up replying or whatever to his comments maybe, but it's amazing how they'll jump when certain people speak out about different things, but people on the right or Christians or people who are maybe aren't believers, but they're more kind of conservative, whatever, they'll say something and Disney's just like unfazed. So it's amazing who these people value as far as their feedback and their feelings and whose dollar they'll respect. And if they even respect the power of the dollar anymore at all, it seems like they're willing to take an L and willing to take a loss in money if they get the right message across. So I think it's telling who they want to appeal to and what they want to put out and stuff. In the grand scheme of things, is it like a big deal that Snow White isn't actually a white woman? No, not really. But I also think it's important why they want to do the changes. Like that, someone was like following me and I had different posts on YouTube about it and they just couldn't understand why I kept talking about the Little Mermaid and other stuff like that. And then I did one particular post about how the people who say race doesn't, the races of these characters don't matter, don't believe that race doesn't matter. They believe race matters all the time. They if you say I don't see race or race isn't important or we should live in a colorblind society, they think that's actually racist, that you have to be an anti-racist. And they believe that, you know, white people are always racist. They believe in CRT, which CRT is like, yeah, white people are racist. They have no incentive to change the structure. And even if they do things that appear to be not racist, they're actually doing it for their own self-interest and not because they really want to change things, or they're really not racist. So there's all these like complex sort of issues and feelings. They believe in unconscious bias. So even you might be doing things and you're unaware that you're actually racist and doing things because you're racist or whatever. It's just kind of underneath things you can't quite control, I guess, to some kind of degree. So I don't know how you quite train yourself out of those things, but they believe that skin color always matters. So I think the reasoning as to why these people make these changes matter. Now I don't know how talented of an actress she is, because I don't know if I've this is the same actress who's in Shazam, so maybe that's the only thing I've seen her in. She was in what's the movie with the sharks and the jets and it's like a Romeo Juliet kind of thing, West Side Story. And they said she could really sing. And that's one of the reasons why they cast her, because she's such a great singer. There's a lot of great singers out there, though. So I don't buy, people just like, oh, it was because they were the best for the job. Maybe they're the best for what you want them to do in this particular situation, but a lot of times there's other factors at play, and people don't like white people. That's what it really seems like in a lot of these cases. It's not only about being inclusive, it's also about being anti-white. And I just can't pretend like I didn't live in a society in 2020 when people were propping up white fragility, and Coca-Cola had the tutorials on how to be less white. And that's not the only company that does that. And people were apologizing for their whiteness and their privilege and saying that they were racist. And if you didn't admit that you were white and racist, that you were super, super racist. I just can't forget that I lived in that society when the African American History Museum, with Smithsonian, the big 4-layer level one, and like DC put out a document about how whiteness in America is bad, and how the Washington Post did a video on whiteness in America and why it's bad. And I just can't forget that all that stuff exists, and and those people who believe those things are still out there. So it's just, I think inclusion is a good thing. I think diversity is a good thing. I do. Like, I was mindful when I made Super Kid, and it's diverse. People look at it and they're like, oh, those characters are pretty diverse. And you see multicultural kinds of things in there, and things about like Felix, his mom is Mexican, his dad is white, and things are celebrated in within his mom's culture, and you see the different backgrounds and stuff. So it's I think diversity is good. I do. But I think this attitude of less white is good is bad. And I talked about, like, for example, and then I'll draw a close. When people were talking about Namor in Wakanda Forever, I'm like, that's not my Namor. That's not what he looks like. The story is not the same. I had a poster of Namor on my wall. There's a Michael Turner one. And I'm like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling this at all. And he just wasn't the character. And I like the character. I'm not some random who didn't know who Namor is. I know who Namor is. And so people were coming at me and they're like, as a brown person, you should be happy. And I'm like, we're not the same kind of brown. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? I'm like, I'm supposed to be happy because he's not white. Like, that's the moral of the story. Because he's not black. So I should just be happy that he's not a white person. That's what you want me to do. Just be happy he's not white. Because that sounds uber racist. And I'm not cool with living in that world. I don't think that's progress. So again, I think grand scheme of things, this stuff doesn't matter. These people are striking, and there's a lot of people who obviously care because they're in the thick of it. And there's people who are like, who cares if they ever come back? They've been producing garbage for a long time now. But I do think it matters why they wanted to make the change. And it makes people question, like, why are you doing it? And people are hypersensitive because they're aware of how woke and racist these people are or have been. Like, we didn't just forget that. So that's why it's always like a topic of conversation. So the movie doesn't look great. Like, on top of changing these iconic heroes of the actual story, it just doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good at all. Like, it looks not real. It looks really, really awful. You look at it. The costumes, someone said it looked like a hobo encampment from like Seattle, and I agree, it does.
Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you go to blacktnews.com and check out different articles, different videos, and also check out our merchandise. If you like what I do, you can also support the website on the donate page. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and also that notification bell. God bless.